The subcommittee will come to order. Members present will be permitted to submit written statements to be included in the official hearing record. Without objection, the hearing record will remain open for 5 calendar days to allow statements, questions, and extraneous material for the record subject to length limitations in the rules. I'm excited to be here today because we meet today to discuss South Asia nations of the Indian Ocean region, a group of states that are small in number but more and more consequential on the world stage. Bangladesh, India, the Maldives, Nepal, Sri Lanka are also becoming more central to the U.S. foreign policy and national security. These nations collectively include over 1.5 billion residents, about a fifth of the world's population. The Trump administration has taken a holistic view of Asia, understanding and the Western Pacific and the Indian Ocean are deeply interconnected. President Trump, Secretary Pompeo, and Administrator Green have all championed the free and open Indo-Pacific strategy, which places an increased emphasis on South Asia. The United States is putting forward a very different proposal for the region, one that would protect freedom and openness instead of relying on bribery and predation. Our diplomats need to be creative, effective, and properly resourced. Apart from these important regional strategic considerations, South Asia presents a diverse spread of intractable other foreign policy challenges. In the last year, 700,000 plus Rohingya have fled ethnic cleansing in Burma to seek refuge in Bangladesh. Bangladesh is still a developing country in its own right, is still struggling to support a massive population of refugees which are constantly at risk from monsoon floods, health crises, and other disasters. The stories have faded from international headlines since the explosion of violence from Burma's Tatamada last August, but the Rohingya crisis remains one of the world's most urgent humanitarian emergencies. Bangladesh faces a host of other challenges: militancy, extrajudicial killings, and a troubled electoral season, to name just a few. It's headed for an election, but remains in an extended crisis of democracy and is subject of intense Chinese influence in recent years, and is struggling to address its development needs while determining its political future in places in the region. As the Indian Ocean becomes more central to U.S. foreign policy, our diplomatic and development efforts must address all these challenges and many, many more. The South Asian region has the demographic potential to transform the world, but presents equally intractable problems. The administration should be commended for recognizing the region's importance, but we must follow through, so it is essential that the U.S. engagement is properly targeted and resourced. I thank the witnesses for joining us today to discuss how the administration plans to allocate resources among our critical regions in the South Asia region, and I now turn to our ranking member, Mr. Brad Sherman of California.
Today's hearing covers India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and the Maldives. In the past 4 years, our annual foreign aid to these countries has averaged $400 million. The President proposes that we cut this to $219 million. With Bangladesh, more needs to be done on accountability for human rights and the human rights violations and democracy and economic needs in Bangladesh.
We are thankful to be joined today by 2 repeat customers. Appreciate you coming back. The Honorable Alice G. Wells, Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary to the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. Thank you for coming back. Ms. Gloria Steele, Senior Deputy Assistant Administrator for the Bureau of Asia and the U.S. Agency for International Development, otherwise known as USAID. Question next will go to Mr. Scott Perry from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ladies, for being here and for your testimony and your service. Ms. Steele, I'm particularly interested in Bangladesh and the way you characterized it. I mean, and I don't know, you used a metaphor which escapes me at the moment regarding kind of like going through school, right? For some of these countries, like they're progressing on their way, right? And I don't, but because what I wrote down is, do any of them ever graduate? Is my question. Do any of them ever graduate from this progression towards where the United States hopes they'll be? And we hope they do. I'm just asking if we have any of those success stories where at some point we're just good friends with those folks, and they're good friends with us, and they do their thing, and we do ours, and we buy stuff from them and sell stuff, and everybody's happy. Do we get to that point anywhere in this area of the world?
I use the term journey to self-reliance.
Yes, there you go. But even though they're on the journey, and even though they're progressing, they're far from where we hope they will eventually be. So it's not like we're going to help them this far, and then when they complete that portion of the journey, we're out, right? We're going to.
Bangladesh itself has made tremendous progress, but it is far from being a higher income, higher middle income country.
I'm privileged to know that. Let me ask you a little more about Bangladesh. You mentioned health security, and I think civil society or institutional capacity. In that context, and the other things that you mentioned, it seems to me one of the biggest things that we can assist with or advocate for is free and open democratic elections there. And I just wonder where we stand with that and where that is on the list of priorities.
It is a high priority. In fact, among the countries in South Asia, we have allocated the biggest amount for democracy and governance programs. We're working with civil society, youth groups, and various groups in order to make sure that the voice of the people are heard in the coming elections. We're working to make sure that the elections are going to be free, open, and transparent. And we have been working with them for several months now, in fact, over a year, which is what is necessary. We can't just work on the day off or after.
Well, we're very interested in Congress to see the outcome of that, and I just wanted to impress upon that fact upon you. Ambassador, I see that you want to add some.
No, it's very much part of our political dialogue. The last elections were not contested by the major opposition party, and that detracts, from the strength of the government. And when I met today with the foreign minister of Bangladesh, I reiterated what our Ambassador Bernakat in Dhaka, has been underscoring privately and publicly, the need for a contested and fair election.
Let me ask you a little more about Bangladesh. You mentioned health security, and I think civil society or institutional capacity. In that context, and the other things that you mentioned, it seems to me one of the biggest things that we can assist with or advocate for is free and open democratic elections there. And I just wonder where we stand with that and where that is on the list of priorities.
No, it's very much part of our political dialogue. The last elections were not contested by the major opposition party, and that detracts, from the strength of the government. And when I met today with the foreign minister of Bangladesh, I reiterated what our Ambassador Bernakat in Dhaka, has been underscoring privately and publicly, the need for a contested and fair election.
We're very interested in Congress to see the outcome of that, and I just wanted to impress upon that fact upon you. Ambassador, I see that you want to add some.
It's very much part of our political dialogue. The last elections were not contested by the major opposition party, and that detracts, from the strength of the government. And when I met today with the foreign minister of Bangladesh, I reiterated what our Ambassador Bernakat in Dhaka, has been underscoring privately and publicly, the need for a contested and fair election.
Okay.
No, it's very much part of our political dialogue. The last elections were not contested by the major opposition party, and that detracts, from the strength of the government. And when I met today with the foreign minister of Bangladesh, I reiterated what our Ambassador Bernakat in Dhaka, has been underscoring privately and publicly, the need for a contested and fair election.